Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Sherwer, and welcome to Influencers, and welcome to our guest, Bill Gates, co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and co-founder and former CEO of Microsoft. Bill, great to see you.
Great to talk with you.
So it's been about 4 months now, Bill, since coronavirus was widely recognized as spreading throughout the United States. We're still seeing cases increase in half of the states here. How would you assess where we are right now fighting the coronavirus?
Well, this has been a huge tragedy. The health costs, the economic costs are, so gigantic, hundreds of thousands of lives, trillions of dollars. And so we need to stop this thing. We need to stop it in the United States. We need to stop it globally. The only positive thing out of this is that the pace of innovation, the way our foundation is working with the private sector to create therapeutics and vaccines, that's moving at record speed. And that's what gives us hope that we can get the death rate down with better therapeutics. Even by the end of the year, many new therapeutics will be out. And then during 2021, we should be able to manufacture a lot of vaccines. And that vaccine, key goal is to stop the transmission, to get the immunity levels up so that you get almost no infection going on whatsoever.
Yeah, you predicted recently that this current surge in the coronavirus will drive up the death rate. How bad do you think things will get, and when do you think that would turn around?
Our peak death rate was well over 2,000 a day. The doctors have learned to use the ventilator less, to use oxygen earlier. You have remdesivir, that's an antiviral from Gilead. We're trying to get that to be reformulated so it's even easier to use. You have dexamethasone, which is an immune system modulator that a study we funded in the UK has shown. So there's the risk of death has gone down almost a factor of 2 because of these treatment understandings. But as we get into the fall and people are more indoors, if we haven't cut the infection going into that, we could get back up to that 2,000 a day.
You've said that serious mistakes were made in handling this virus, this pandemic here in the United States. What was the biggest mistake?
Well, even today, people talk about the testing number, but people should know how incompetent it is that we reimburse for a test where you don't get the results within 24 hours. You need to prioritize the tests so that you're getting the results back. You shouldn't reimburse at all for a delayed test. So the U.S. is more blind to who should be quarantining themselves than any country in the world. And it's ironic because we have more of these PCR machines, we spend more money on them, and yet because the CDC wasn't allowed to prioritize who gets tested, and the states have a hard time doing that, we are allowing the majority of tests to be essentially wasted. That delay, where they made it harder for the commercial providers to get their tests approved, they didn't let them do the testing, they didn't do community testing. Those March mistakes led to that first gigantic problem that we had. And in contrast, people like South Korea got to the commercial test providers and were able to have a very modest epidemic.
If you were in charge right now, Bill, maybe even the president of the United States, what would you do?
Well, trying to denigrate Dr. Fauci probably isn't the best approach. You want the experts to get the airtime, let them talk about what drug trials have worked, which ones haven't. Don't, mislead people on those things. And, the US CDC is a very capable organization, the best in the world. Dr. Fauci and I talk on a regular basis about this innovation pipeline and how our foundation and NIH are funding both a first wave of vaccines and then a second wave of vaccines. And so the capacity to do this right exists in the country. You just build a website, put the CDC's name on it, and it will prioritize who should get tested. You get the message about masks to be a kind of bipartisan, let's protect other people type message, and then you engage in the complex discussion about which things it's beneficial to reopen, like perhaps kids under 15, whereas schools for older kids in communities with lots of infection, sadly, you probably aren't going to be able to do in person.
You mentioned masks. Should masks be nationally mandated, Bill?
Well, the downside to wearing a mask is so low that, I can't understand why, it's even a controversy at all. The mask is cheap, it's easy to wear, it has no negative effects. If you're going outside your house, you put on a mask because you'll end up getting close to people. And we know this is not a coughing disease, just talking can expel the virus.
Do you think about things like the bills in Congress in terms of the relief, the stimulus package? Or is that kind of the stuff that you weigh in on, or have you thought about how that should go?
Well, the expertise of our foundation is more around the disease tools themselves. And so, yes, there are elements of these supplemental allocations that are very, very important to us. How we fund the therapeutics and the vaccines, including not just the United States. We're trying to get 1% of the bill that's under discussion now to go to buy vaccines for the developing countries, because not only would that save lives and have this great humanitarian and strategic benefit in terms of U.S. leadership, it's also the only thing that will stop the disease from coming back to our country. And so the idea that 1% shows that the U.S. cares. Yes, we funded a lot of R&D, but we haven't funded the procurement for these poor countries, which historically in every global health thing, whether it's smallpox or polio or HIV or Ebola, the U.S. is there not just in a selfish way, funding its own factories, but also helping out the entire world. And so that's a very compelling case. And so I am every day talking to people in government, people at drug companies, trying to make sure that we get money for the entire world.
Let's drill down to that a little bit. How would you prioritize then who gets the vaccine? And let's just say you've got Moderna over here. We were talking about J&J. If we're lucky, there'll be a couple of them, maybe 8 months, 9 months from now. Do you prioritize things in the United States by risk group? And then how do you disseminate globally, Bill?
Well, the only solution to this constrained supply is to have massive manufacturing capability. If you're going to vaccinate 80% of the planet with 2 doses that may be necessary, that's over 10 billion doses of a vaccine. And to make that even in, say in a year, that would be 20 times more than any vaccine production ever. And so what we're looking at is no matter who invents the vaccine, say AstraZeneca or Johnson & Johnson, where are there other factories around the world that could be brought up to speed to make that? So, get factories in India, factories in Europe, not just the ones that the US has been involved with that are in the United States. And so the companies that are doing this, with the global mindset and who say, okay, we're not trying to profit on this, they're engaging with us on this whole production plan. Even so, you will have shortages, but we're able to fund those factories at risk because we can move very, very quickly. And so that I feel good that those plans are coming into place. We'll want to go for health workers first. Anybody who has to mix around people who work at nursing homes, the vaccine has two good things. One is it should prevent transmission, and the other is it should prevent you from getting sick. And understanding exactly how well any of these vaccine constructs do that, that's what we're trialing. The first vaccine that gets approved may only be 50% effective. And so we'll still need to go, we need eventually to get one that's cheap, high volume, and about 90% effective.
Should the pharma companies be able to profit off of this, Bill?
Well, if you've taken money from, U.S. BARDA or others, hopefully they put terms in those contracts so that the pricing is reasonable. There are one or two companies that have, like Pfizer, who've chosen to fund it themselves, and so they put out the R&D and they did a purchase option for the U.S. So it's a little different in that case. Definitely for the poorest countries in the world, always for medicines, they should get just the marginal cost to manufacture, no matter whose it is. So in the case of the developing countries, nobody should try and make money. That would make pharma look really bad. I'm hoping that the great innovative skills that pharma's showing here, that they behave in a way that their reputation is better after the pandemic than it is going in.
Bill, for those people who don't know, could you explain a little bit about exactly how the foundation has been working to fight coronavirus?
Yeah, so a lot of the expertise on how you deal with infectious disease that is not in the private sector is at our foundation because, malaria, HIV, tuberculosis, these huge killers that are only modestly in the rich countries now, but are still a main reason why people die in the developing countries. That's our regular activity. And so, understanding vaccine costs and factories and trials, is our deep expertise. And we spend billions of dollars a year working on these new tools. When this respiratory disease caused by coronavirus came along, we shifted our activities to focus on this because it's hurting the health systems everywhere, and so we're working on therapeutics, we're working on the vaccines. It's because we're not going to use the marketplace here. It's an imperative to accelerate this research, even not based on how much money people are going to make. Our ability to evaluate which vaccine looks promising and tell countries, okay, please fund this factory. We're kind of in a central role in terms of the depth that we understand the biology and these new tools.
Have you ever given any thought to the fact that you're the person, maybe one of the people, but certainly a key person who recognized early on the power of the PC and the PC revolution, and you're also one of the people who recognized how devastating these pandemics could be? Have you ever thought about that? And is there any connection between those two massive epiphanies, perhaps?
Well, my career has been about innovation, and Melinda and I picked global health as the biggest single thing the foundation works on. And that gave me the exposure to say, wow, respiratory diseases, human to human transmitted, when people are traveling around so much, could be worse than 100 years ago when we had the big flu pandemic. So I spoke out about that. I wish I had been wrong. This is nothing but bad. This is not like I told you so type thing, because we could have taken the warning from myself and other health experts and been better prepared and avoided 90% of this damage. So the only good thing here is that we will prepare for the next one. That is the ability to scale up diagnostics and therapeutics and vaccines. We will get that right. And the science, which is what always draws me in, whether it's computer software or biology, the science is improving so quickly that by backing the right teams, being willing to take risk, we will come out with a set of tools to make sure this doesn't happen again.
You're so engaged. I mean, did you ever think about becoming a scientist or a doctor when you were younger?
Well, I love all of science. And in my Microsoft days, I was so engaged in running Microsoft that I didn't get to stay up to date on what was going on with genetics or a lot of the other sciences. Since I retired in 2008, I've been able to, look broadly. And of course, the foundation work gives me access to some incredibly bright people and teams that we come back who are doing, just phenomenal work with the goal of saving lives. So, I've gotten to have two super interesting careers that are, 80% alike in terms of working with innovators and looking out into the future in terms of what can have a dramatic impact.
You mentioned talking to all kinds of high-profile people, great minds, et cetera. I know you talk to Warren Buffett a fair amount. What do you guys talk about when it comes to COVID-19 and the current situation, Bill?
Yeah, actually, Warren and I are talking on a more regular basis than ever because the policy issues, the economic issues, what this means for various companies. Just talking with Warren about, okay, furniture sales are actually at a record high, but, railroad shipments are 20% below their peak. The economic situation, overall it's pretty tough, but it's complex to say, okay, which kind of businesses will survive? Why is the stock market, at the level that it's at? Why are interest rates where they are? And so Warren and I find the world fascinating, and there's, a lot going on that we're trying to puzzle out. Okay, what can we do to help, or where is this headed?
He told me in March, Bill, that you said to him that you were not sure that the summer would make this virus go away. And you were right, it seems. Why did you think that?
Well, the U.S. opened up while infection rates were still going up. The summer is helpful. High temperature reduces force of infection. People spend more time outdoors. The fall, if we didn't have these new innovations coming, or more people adhering to the face mask regulations, the fall could be very tough. And part of the irony is that it's the communities that haven't had it badly who are going to be most at risk in the fall. And, so we saw in the spring, a lot of cities were saying, well, we're not New York. And then, even as that rate was creeping up, they opened up. So, the U.S. Sadly is not taking this seriously. The fall could be tough, mostly in new places. And then, of course, we have the entire world where there's a lot of places. South America's tough today, but Africa, the numbers keep going up. Thank goodness that we have the innovation coming, because otherwise the eventual damage, would go on for over 5 years.
Yeah, and one place we need help still is testing. I mean, Quest just this week said they're actually falling behind or not catching up to that lag that you spoke of. Why is that? What can we do there quickly?
Well, it's insane. You shouldn't pay anyone for a test where you have the results that it takes longer than 48 hours. The whole point of the test is to let you know that you need to isolate yourself so you don't infect other people. Once you test positive, your days of infection are actually, unfortunately, a few days probably before you go to get tested, and then that 3 or 4 days afterwards. And so there is zero value to a delayed test. You can write an apology note to all the people you saw during that time, but the idea that we're not at the federal level outraged by the waste of money and the inequitable allocation of our testing, which is the simplest thing about this whole thing. We have more PCR machines than any country in the world. And, to get the supplies, get the prioritization, we've shown now that you can use a swab that you just put at the tip of the nose. And we got the FDA to approve it. There's still a lot of places using that one where they, the worker who has to get exposed jams it into the back of your throat. So it's been so slow. The conversations with, CDC, they say, hey, that's up at the White House level, and then you don't have the experts there being listened to.
17 players and staff of Major League Baseball's Miami Marlins have tested positive for COVID-19 in recent days. Should the league suspend or shut down the season even?
Well, I'm not an expert on that. I'm the one area I'm really trying to make sure that the data is available has to do with the choices people make on schools. The idea that they're not going to have fans, all these sports are trying to do things in a safe way. And, I don't know what trade-offs are involved there. The worst thing about infection is if it gets to elderly people. And so anyone, if you're in a multi-generational household or you really have to behave in a way that you're not connecting to the elderly, which is why the death rate's gone up over the last few months, because so many young people got infected and then it spread up in age.
But is it fair, do you think, that we're testing all these pro athletes while tests are so hard to come by in the rest of the country?
It shouldn't. If we would just use our testing capacity properly, that would be okay. And the testing capacity will go up. There's a lot of new machines. There's a test called the lateral flow test that some people will be coming out with. So we're working with a lot of people, including getting that swab out in the community. So you can just go to a community center or the pharmacy and get that swab and give yourself the test and then put it in the plastic bag and send it in. That avoids the delay of, getting the test sent to you or having to drive somewhere or go to the doctor's office where you might expose somebody. So the innovation on the testing side, there's a roadmap there, but it's been slow to get attention.
But what about these conspiracy theories? And you're the subject of them, that you've used this pandemic to attempt to implant tracking devices in people. Does it bother you that this stuff is out there, particularly when you're working so hard to eradicate COVID-19?
Well, certainly it looks like conspiracy theories, these lies travel faster than the truth, particularly in an age of social media. The fact that our foundation is involved in vaccines and it has to do with saving lives, that's true. They just invert it to say that somehow, we're not trying to save lives. Instead of giving money, we're trying to make money. And, it's unfortunate, particularly if it means people are reluctant to take the vaccine, if it means they don't trust this message about face masks because they think that people giving them advice are, corrupt in some way. I mean, the two most attacked people in this phase have been myself and Dr. Fauci. And, Dr. Fauci's just telling us the truth. Some days he's allowed to tell the truth. Some days he doesn't get contradicted, by his leadership. So this is a communications exercise. And so far, the U.S. doesn't get a very high grade, and that could mean that seeking out therapies or willingness to use the vaccine will make this disease last longer.
I mean, you're seeing this stuff on social media. Just this week, there's a video by people who are purportedly doctors saying that you shouldn't wear masks and suggesting you use hydroxychloroquine. And it got just tons of views on Facebook and YouTube. Should these companies be taken to task for that? I mean, should they continue, for instance, to get protection by Section 230?
Yeah, the changing 230, I don't think people have thought through what that leads to. But
Are you against that then?
well, the idea of trying to create liability for any untrue thing, you have to decide, would you still be able to have that type of forum? In terms of this outrageous, hydroxychloroquine anti-mask thing, it spread so fast that even though eventually the social media people stopped it, it was so famous that now people are still seeking it out. And so their ability to stop things before they become widespread, I think they probably should improve that. I don't think it's easy because it spread so quickly. I mean, that thing was fairly new, and now we have 14 million views, and you can't find it directly on those services, but everybody's sending the link around because it's still out there on the internet. And that one is, I mean, this hydroxychloroquine thing, this is nutty stuff. I mean, we're supposed to be a developed country that, uses science. Oh my God, it is really hard to believe that that's what's being retweeted.
Are you frustrated by Tony Fauci's his boss's leadership? And I think you've been reluctant to criticize President Trump by name, and why is that?
Anything that encourages the executive branch to come around as opposed to, pugilistically fight back. We're all in this together. People of both parties are sick and dying and being hurt economically. So, and we have, everybody involved has made mistakes. We didn't know that masks were such a big deal. Our foundation didn't, Dr. Fauci didn't. In fact, in the early days, we wanted to save the mask capacity for the health workers. And so it's fair to say that was an honest mistake. We actually understand why hydroxychloroquine in the test tube looked effective, but the cells that were used are not the same as human cells. So that's why that got so confused, and so now, we're pursuing other things, and there's lots of good therapeutics that will work, that are coming along. And, so we want to not push away the leadership that, should enable the positive truth to get out. So just, making a fight out of it, I give Dr. Fauci a lot of credit. He just rolls with the punches and, tries to get it out. We touch base with him on a regular basis because the U.S. government, our foundation, are the two biggest funders of these new interventions. And that is the hopeful part of this whole thing, that actually that's the one thing the U.S. has been the best at. Other governments aren't funding research and development on new tools at the same way the U.S. is. Now we're encouraging them to do so, but they've been a bit slower.
Bill, Google just announced that they wouldn't be having people back to the offices until next July. Is this going to really change the way we think of office work forever, for a long time? What's your take on that?
Yeah, there's a lot of debate about that. I am surprised that, nobody's gone into our foundation offices since early March. Microsoft's offices, which are in this huge campus, are empty. And yet for certain types of work, the productivity is not dramatically reduced. Now, I don't think we'll stay at that extreme. We want, you to meet new employees and sit and talk with each other. But, do you need to come in 5 days a week for a full day? I think people's minds have been opened about less travel, maybe less time in the office, setting your home up so you have a space that you're not interfering with the other members of the household so you can concentrate. I think that will be quite different. How far different companies will go, is open-ended. But yes, it's now possible to do a lot of jobs remotely. A lot of those employees are going to move to some part of the country, because they know not until July are they expected to show up.
Last question, Bill. You talk to all kinds of people. Who gives you the most hope that we're going to be able to get out of this at some point? You mentioned Tony Fauci. What other people do you find inspiring or just are doing great work?
Well, the private sector companies, a lot of them have diverted their talent onto this work. And that's fantastic. A group we work with at Oxford, Adrian Hill and his team, they, are contributing to this. Trevor Mundell runs our global health stuff, and, he's just day and night, trying to accelerate the work here. It's great to see these teams coming together. And it's almost kind of a warlike situation where you think, hey, time is of an essence. Anyone we call, is likely to respond. We need your expertise on how to make antibodies quickly. We need more glass vials, for 6 billion vaccines. That all these deep capacities being used where it's not, a profit-driven thing. I'm quite impressed with that. There'll be a great story to tell. Not everybody's participating perfectly, but the private sector overall, and the boundary between academia and the private sector and the speed now, it's really wonderful. And, that's where we're going to get some great tools, even a few, well before the end of the year.
Oh, that's great to hear. That's great to hear. All right, we're going to leave it at that. Bill Gates, thank you very much for your time.